Well, let us understand what an elegy is. Uh, we will today have a comprehensive view of elegy as a genre. Arnold is the most elegiac poet in English literature. Uh, uh, if I had to define Arnold's place in poetry, sage, Gerard, I should be disposed to say of him quite simply uh, that he is the greatest elegiac poet in the language, not in virtue merely of thesis. If anyone likes to think Adonai is a greater elegy, I am not over much disposed to quarrel with him, but in virtue of the whole temper of his muse, his genius was essentially elegiac. Since Arnold's poems are elegiac in character, it's necessary that we should know something about elegy as a literary genre and Arnold as an elegiac poet. Uh, yes, we have to begin with the definition of an elegy and learn what an elegy means and the traditions which you find in Greek literature, Roman literature and so on. The word elegy is derived from the Greek elegia, which means lament. Um, Usually an elegy is a reflective poem which laments the death of a person. It may also be a poet's reflection on the tragic aspects of life. In literature, dirge, threnody, monody and lament are variations on almost the same thing. They are generally shorter versions of the elegy. Dirges, sage, lament are intended to be sung. A threnody is a song like but not necessarily intended for musical accompaniment. This is the difference. While we come to a monody, we find a monody is a simple lyric spoken by a single person. Lament may refer to any song expressing deep sorrow or more narrowly to the old English versions of the elegy. In ancient Greece, elegy had a wider connotation. The term in Greek literature, sage, premenger, referred both to a specific verse form, that is, couplets consisting of a hexameter followed by a pentameter line, and to the emotions frequently conveyed by that verse form. Originally, any poem in this distinct form, with the exception of the epigram, was known as an elegy. Whether it concerned the dead, whether it was a war song or a political satire, or it dealt with love. It's interesting to note that the prototypes of the modern elegy were known to be idylls. Theocritus was the first man to write idylls, of which Lament for Daphnis deserves special mention. Bion, a Greek poet, an imitator of Theocritus, is remembered for his Lament for Artemis. Moschus is famous for his Lament for Bion, which is a dirge for the poet's friend and teacher. The elegies of Theocritus, Bion, and Moschus are the prototypes of Milton's Lycidas, Sallust, Adonais, and Matthew-Arnold's Tyrcis. Of the Latin poets, dealing with the theme of lamentation, mention may be made of Gallus, Propertius, Tibullus, and the great epic poet Ovid. Some poets of Italy of the 16th century, for example Tasso and Ariosto, expressed melancholy sentiments in certain poems, and that tradition was transmitted to Leopardi and Carducci. In France, Ronsard, Malherbe and Henri Chenier, though not belonging to the same age, imitated the classical model of the elegy. Lope de Vega and Federico Garcia Lorca of Spain may also be mentioned in this connection. In England, the elegy became a popular literary genre in the 16th century, but in this early stage the term elegy meant not only poems of lament but also of patriarchal love. John Donne was the first Elizabethan to associate death with elegy in his Anatomy of the World. A critic has ably drawn a line of distinction between the elegiac and the elegy. The elegiac refers to poems having a deep, pervasive tone of melancholy. For example, Johnson's Vanity of Human Visage, Thomas Gray's Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard, and Young's Night Thoughts. Alexander Pope's elegy on the death of an unfortunate lady and Alfred Tennyson's In Memoriam may well be called elegies proper. Now, pastoral elegy begins with Theocritus. The term pastoral is derived from Latin pastor, which means a shepherd. That is, his activities spread over pasture and they are confined to tending to the sheep, taking care of them. Pastoral poetry, therefore, deals with the bucolic life of the shepherds who lived in the imaginary golden age. Layman says the formal or pastoral elegy is characterized by certain conventions. The poet and the deceased are shown as shepherds living in the midst of nature, which is personified, which join in the mourning for the departed. The poem begins with an invocation to the muse and contains numerous classical allusions and continues by questioning the guardian of the deceased, usually natural beings like the flora and fauna of the pastoral scene, concerning their inability to protect the deceased affectively, moves to a processing or catalogue of the mourners, and an entire section, the length doesn't matter, it may be either small or long, is devoted, the poet devotes it to the challenge which are thrown at human or divine justice, and concludes with a reconciliation in which the poet realizes that death is a blessed reunion with God or nature. For example, Milton's Lycidas. The elaborate form of the pastoral elegy is one of the most striking instances of the way poetry used complex conventions to control and transcend raw emotion by ritualizing it. The pastoral convention has been transmitted through generations from Theocritus. Uh, Virgil in his Eclogues refined Theocritus' idols and sought to console his friend who lost his mistress. In England, Milton's Lycidas, Shelley's Adonais, Matthew Arnold's Circes uh, conform to the classical conventions of pastoral elegy. Swinburne, famous critic, described the irresistible appeal of the pastoral elegy. There is grace ineffable, sweet sound, and sweet savour of things past in the old beautiful use of the language of the shepherds, of flocks and pipers. The spirit is nonetheless sad and sincere because the body of the poem has put on this dear familiar raiment of romance, because the crude and naked sorrow is veiled and chastened with soft shadows of the land that is very far off. This is what we should keep in mind before dealing with the poem, The Scholar Gypsy. And as we have just learned, it is a pastoral elegy and it follows many conventions which are a part of the rich genre. Coming to the Scholar Gypsy, we find it's one of Arnold's most successful poems, perhaps also the most well known, though the poet himself rated it below Sohrab and Rustam. The idea of composing the Scholar Gypsy had occurred to Arnold in late 1848. Two earlier titles he considered were the first Mesmerist and the Wandering Mesmerist, which relate to the interest taken by Arnold and his family during 1844 and 45 in a topical subject like mesmerism. The poem was probably composed between May and August 1853. When it was first published in 1853, Arnold appended the following note, which consists of sentences drawn from Joseph Glanvill's Vanity of Human Dogmatism. There was very lately a lad in the university at Oxford who was by his very poverty forced to leave his studies there, at last to join himself to a company of vagabond gypsies. Among these extravagant people, by the insinuating subtlety of his carriage, he quickly got so much of their love and esteem as that they discovered to him their mystery. After he had been a pretty while well excised in their trade, a chance to write by a couple of scholars who had formerly been of his acquaintance. They quickly spied out their old friend among the gypsies, and he gave them an account of the necessity which drove him to that kind of life, and told them that the people he went with were not such impostors as they were taken for by others, but they had a traditional kind of learning among them and could do wonders by their power of imagination, their fancy binding that of others. That he himself had learned much of their art, and when he had compassed the whole secret of that ancient lore of the gypsies, he professed to leave their company and give the world an account of what he had learned. So this is the opt rate tale.